If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome to Why Write. I'm your host, Angela Grout. Thanks for tuning in to another episode to find out who's writing what and why you should be writing your story. Today, I have a guest who is zooming in here on the computer, and he has written a book about surviving pancreatic cancer. He's a resilient survivor and now an author. He has had numerous life-changing challenges. And we're going to talk to him a little bit about those, but we're going to find out about why he's written this book and what it's doing to help people. Our guest today is Andy Campbell, and he is a victim of childhood sexual abuse and bullying. He lost his mother at a very early age, and he ended up having this eventual estrangement from his father. And he battled stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He has a very unique perspective on resilience, and he has 15 core beliefs, which I think we all are going to have to tune in, because if he survived pancreatic cancer, we need these things. So he has a Facebook page, which we're going to talk about too, about overcoming life's toughest setbacks. And he is the author of Rise Beyond, Turn Trauma into Triumph. And I would like to welcome him now. This is Andy Campbell.
Hi.
Hi,
Nice
Andy.
to be here,
Thank you.
Angela.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome. Glad
Thank
to be
you.
here.
I don't have a copy of your book here. Do you have a copy you can just hold up for us? We'll do it again
I
later,
do.
but
I
this
do.
is the book. Yes, here it is. Overcoming Life's Toughest Setbacks. And boy, have you had some setbacks.
There have been a few. Yes, there have been a few.
I learned about you through another podcast through our channel, the Healing Voices podcast with Michael Torville, who is also an
Yeah.
author. He's been on my show a few times. But you were on a recent episode of his discussing, your resilience and how you've overcome the toughest setbacks. You know, losing your mother at a young age is always going to be a trauma for all children, because no one can replace a mother. But you've had all these things where you've kept these core values, these core beliefs, and it's somehow got you. I don't know, do you feel healed from them, or do these core values help you?
Yeah, I think Angela, so some people hear words. When other people speak, they hear words. When people speak, I hear pictures. And so a picture forms when you're speaking about anything. I'm forming a picture. And over time, I would, I think I have observed something that I think to be kind of universally true, or something that I found to be true in dealing with difficulty, or just generally in life. And so I would write down these little phrases, cliches, that would help me remember what that picture was. So when I needed to recall it and kind of return to it, kind of my bank of, okay, you've done this before. You've survived this before. You can kind of, you know that you don't have to question if you can. Yes, it's going to be painful. Yes, it's going to hurt, but you can do this. And over time, I collected 15 of these things that, people would say, well, how did you get through this? And I'd say, well, I have these kind of core beliefs that I refer back to. They're aspirational because I don't always apply them correctly, but they are things that I have observed that I remind myself when I'm facing difficult circumstances. Go back to, kind of go back to the playbook, and so over time, you go through a few things. The pancreatic cancer. I lost my youngest son to suicide about 2.5 years into the
Yeah, I'm so
pancreatic cancer
sorry.
treatment. Yeah, no, and when I was going through therapy for a lot of that stuff. My wife, my other children, we were all kind of dealing with these things. And my physician, who had and still does quarterback
And your
my
the cancer that you had, it was 6.5 years that you went through
yeah.
this?
I just crossed over 7 years. I'm still in a trial. I still take medication every day.
Mhm.
I've been through a lot of chemotherapy, immunotherapy, targeted drugs, a lot of things along the way.
Did you do
And
chemo and radiation for your
I
treatments?
not radiation. Radiation wasn't one of the treatment. I did a lot of 16 rounds of chemotherapy, and then when my body could no longer take that, I ended up doing some very long sustained fast. And then when I got past those, then I went into a trial at the University of Pennsylvania, who happened to be like the only place in the country that was running a trial for specifically for pancreatic cancer patients who had
Wow.
responded well to chemotherapy but couldn't continue chemotherapy and had a genetic mutation
Mm.
that I carry, and so it was like the perfect fit. And they accepted me into the trial, and I've been there. So I'll always be a stage 4 pancreatic cancer patient. Maybe one day they'll have enough people that survive that I can be considered in remission, but I still have blood work done every 4 weeks. I still have a scan done every 4 months, and like I said, they follow me pretty closely.
But you're
Um,
living happy and healthy. Well, happy and healthy
yeah, I'm
with
alive.
stage
I'm
four
alive.
pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no visible signs of disease on the
Mm.
scans. So that's I'm a very, very small percentage of people who not only have survived it this long, but there's no visible sign of disease. But they won't ever say you're in remission.
Right.
Um,
And
and so
I heard you say you had a genetic mutation. Is what caused the pancreatic cancer?
nobody knows whether it causes, if it were from my point of view, if I'm just looking at it as a non-clinician, but just someone who's been through a lot of clinics. Um, I think, I was born with it. So my question to, the geneticist and the oncologist is, well, then why didn't I have this at the age of 2 or the age of 10 or 20 or
Right.
30 or 40? Why 53? Why did it just show up? I mean, I think we all have defects,
Yeah.
and those defects tend to I don't think they cause the cancer. We have defective cells. Everybody has them today. So everybody has cancer,
Yeah. Yeah.
what we call cancer, right? It's
Yeah.
just they have
Well,
defective cells. And then if those defective cells kind of get together, then we call that a tumor. And so it becomes visible. It's a sign your body is not getting rid of those defective
what
cells
what was
timely.
what was the sign, or how did you find out you had pancreatic cancer?
Accidentally. I was having what turned out to be like IBS, but I was having gastrointestinal problems, and my wife talked me into going to the doctor. I didn't want to. It's a long story
Typical man.
why. Well, I thought I was going to die at 53. I just don't.
Oh,
It's a long story for why I kind
no,
of
I
have
got
it
it. A lot of
in my
people.
head. My mother and all her sisters died from cancer. They all died in their 50s. Her mother died from cancer. So I just kind of thought, like this is, it's inevitable, and this is kind of the way it is. But so I didn't want to go because I was like, they're just going to find that there's something wrong. She goes, no, go. You need to know. We need to know what's going on. So I went, and in essence, they thought I had like a gallstone, and
Mm,
so that was all the symptoms. So they did an ultrasound, found
mm.
lesions on my liver, and when they told me that, I said, well, at least thank God it's not pancreatic cancer. And I got the MRI results. So then they sent me for an MRI a couple of days, and I got the results, and it was like, no, actually, it's stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And so then you go to the PET scan, and then you're off to the races.
Wow, wow. Um, were you a writer before you wrote this book?
No, I'm not a writer now, honestly. I'm not, I don't consider, like people said, and they're like, but you wrote a book. And I was like, well, you know, I put a lot of stuff together, and I wanted my physician and my wife would say, my physician in particular, he's like, you got to write a book. Like you're still
Yes.
alive from pancreatic cancer. And this was like year 3, year 4, year 5. And I was like, I don't want to write a book about pancreatic cancer, because look,
Mm,
we're all kind of unique and individual. So I don't have any great answers for
right.
why it's here. I can tell you what I've done. I believe the strategy that I and my physician put together, it was a three-pronged strategy, and it still is, and I still apply that strategy. I can tell you that I think it certainly had benefits to it, but I can't really tell you how if you had the same thing I had, like
What is your
actual work.
what's the three prong strategy?
So one is you have to do. I took the approach. First part of the strategy is do everything that I can to increase the energy of my mind, body, soul, spirit. So everything from guided imagery, Reiki, acupuncture every week, guided imagery every week, taking supplements that were tuned to like my genetics. So, not just any B12, but a very specific B12, and then a lot of B12, like just kind of loading up on all the things that would help give me the energy. So the first part of the strategy is you have to stay in the struggle. You've got to have enough energy because cancer is consuming energy out of your body. And
Yeah.
that's all it knows to do. It knows to consume energy and replicate. And so it's consuming energy. So you have to like replace that energy and then have enough energy to sustain the battle, sustain the struggle. And then the second part of it was do everything I could to weaken cancer cells. So I wanted to disrupt. I wanted to make my body an inhospitable place for for these defective cells to replicate and congregate. I don't hold any animosity against the cancer. Some people talk very
Yeah.
negatively about cancer. Look, they're just cells that don't know any better, right? Like they think they're normal. They just happen to only do two things: replicate and consume energy and replicate.
That's interesting. I know a lot of
So
people who have named their tumors or something and like, we're gonna evict Willis or whatever.
yeah, and I mean, I'm like, look, I kind of look at it like, look, this is a part of me, it's a part of my body. Um, my body failed in being able to, um, you know, basically kill those cancers, kill defective cells. Your immune system goes around and kills all defective cells anyway. That's what it's supposed to be doing. But there comes a time when it becomes blind to these particular cells, or it's not up to snuff on being able to do the work. And so these cells, they propagate and they overwhelm your immune system. So first thing, energy. Second thing, weaken cancer cells. Third thing, weaken the cancer cells and have enough energy to do the therapies so that the first two parts of the strategy enhance the third.
And succeed. Wow.
Yeah.
You know, and I know we're talking about your cancer journey, but it's very relatable to, I think, everybody's journey, especially because you've had so many different traumas in your life. I know you've had multiple surgeries. I mean, I had 7 surgeries in a 2-year period and,
Oh,
including 2 knee replacements.
wow.
So,
Yeah,
it's like, I'm just hearing you, say those things because it's so true how you have to be in the moment. You don't want to be, you want
yeah,
to escape, but you have to be in the moment and then you have to, prepare for the battle. And, like, for me, just to say, like, when I was having my knee replacement, I took up swimming a couple weeks beforehand to strengthen my other leg because I knew I was going to have to depend on that other leg.
hmm
I knew there was going to be pain,
yeah,
after surgery, there's going to be that pain and the recovery, but trying to stay resilient and not get depressed and not kind of give up, like, to continue fighting through and, going to rehab or whatever, someone has to do when they're going through any kind of traumatic event, having that strength and the perseverance to get through it is something that a lot of people struggle with having. And,
yeah,
I think you sharing your story, even though you didn't want to write a book about pancreatic cancer, I mean, in the end, it does have that story of pancreatic cancer, but it really does show your perseverance, your strength. It shows the resilience of, 6.5 years battling something that no one else has gone that far.
yeah. Well, it's certainly a small number of people. I'm in a s-
Okay, yes,
I'm in
well,
a
yeah,
very
we'll say
small
that.
population. Look, the book is not for people who aren't dealing with like pancreatic cancer. The book is about yes, I touch on the pancreatic cancer. Yes, I touch on my son's suicide. I touch on other things. The purpose of the book is to share what I ultimately ended up doing was I had these 15,
Yep.
phrases that I rely on, these core beliefs. And one day I just started writing some things down about each one. Kind of, if I were going to explain it to somebody, what would I,
Can you
this
share
this
two of
describes
them?
it. Yeah. Let's see, there are no hard decisions, there's only hard consequences.
Hmm.
And so most of the time we know what we should do,
Yeah.
but the consequences, the perceived consequences of that still small voice tells us to do, and the really loud voice that tells us all the horrible things that'll happen if we listen to the small voice. I've learned that it is the hard. Too many times we make decisions, and you'll hear people say this. Words are extremely important to me. The phrasing, how you set your mind up to look at a problem. So, and I've done it a couple times today. I've said the word battle, but I work to use the word struggle because to
Mm.
me, like a fight, a battle, those are short-term things. They're
Oh, I
things that
love
you
that.
engage in and then should walk away from. And so, you have a skirmish, you have a battle, and then the sides retreat. Somebody wins or loses, you retreat, and then you go to
Yes.
another battle, right? But
Yes.
these things that are long term, they're struggles. And struggle to me is a word that just endures. Like it's going to be, the number one cause of death in all of humanity since time immemorial is not heart disease, it's not cancer, it's birth. Birth is the number one cause of death.
Yeah, we're
We're
all
all
dying.
we're all going to die. When people say, "Oh, this disease is terminal," it's your life is terminal. You've been terminal. What they're saying is this is probably the thing that's going to terminate your life, but you're terminal.
Yes.
So, there are no
Yes.
hard decisions. There's only hard consequences. What it means to me is that most of the time, the consequences we perceive are not accurate. They're just what has happened historically. They're the risk management that our brain tries to go through. And so, what we should do is I work to never say this is a hard decision because I really believe that almost always there's exceptions to every rule, but most of the time it's actually not a hard decision. What we've done is we have envisioned the hard consequences, all the bad stuff that will happen if we make that decision. And then we pick up those consequences and we put them on top of the decision and we say, that's a hard decision. But to
Yeah.
me, that's not telling the truth to ourselves. That small voice that when we get quiet, when we really think, that voice that comes through to us, it's telling us what the right thing is. And that's
Yeah.
how I know it, because it's really quiet. Like I have to get quiet to hear it. If it's really
Yeah.
loud, unless there's a lion about to attack me, the loud voice is probably not as useful, right? It's just trying to protect us. It's
Yeah.
not,
In
it's
the
just,
writer's world, they call that the inner critic. We want to, the mean girl. I
yeah,
kick the mean girl out of the
yeah,
room.
right. And so if you kick that out of the room, then what you're left with is it's really not a hard decision. And so that's one of my core beliefs is when I run up against something and I start thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be a hard decision.
Yeah.
I use it to remind myself, is it really? Is it really? Have you gotten quiet? Have you listened? Have you meditated? Have you prayed? Have you thought for a moment? Have you just listened for the quiet voice instead of all these things that you imagine will happen? And I have examples in the book of this, and that one in fact does have to do with the cancer treatments.
Mhm.
Another one is let's see, compete only with yourself. And people
Oh,
say this all the time, but
I,
what I found in my life is that I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I
Yeah.
like that because it is true. And especially when you think about other people who have gone through something similar that you're going through, and whether they had good results or bad results, you start comparing yourself to what they went through. And we all have these unique journeys that we just have to go through what we're going through in this moment.
It's really hard to do, and you're absolutely correct, right? Where you're going through the circumstance you're going through right now, the circumstance I've been through, somebody listening, the circumstance they're going through. Yes, there are other people who have been through not the same, but similar types of circumstances. And you want something out of your circumstance. You have whether even and it extends even to a job or marriage or relationships with friends. Like I remember when in my career there were certain things that I wanted. One was I wanted to be home with my children more than I wanted to be on the road. And so that caused me to make a decision that said, are you going to pursue becoming a vice president, then a senior vice president, then executive? Are you going to pursue that path? And a lot of people that I started with in an industry have achieved those things. Now I can look at them and say, or maybe somebody else in the cancer area, I've been blessed to make it this far, but other people may be struggling. They shouldn't look at me. Their journey is their journey. And so, like as it related to work, if
Mhm.
all I did was look, if you compare yourself to someone else, you're living their life. You're not living your life. Whenever you compare yourself to someone else, and how they handle the situation or what they're going through, you're actually living their life. Because then
Mhm.
you start wherever your eyes go, it's like riding a motorcycle, driving a car. Wherever your eyes focus, that's where you go.
Yeah.
Find
Yeah, as a
yourself in
water
a
skier,
car.
and we used to say, don't look down, you'll fall down.
Right. But if you look like you don't your body look, but if you look to the right and you're skiing, your body will lean to the right and the skis like everything will just flow into motion.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
look that way, that's where you're going, right? And so I think that's what happens when we compare ourselves. We look. at this other person. So it draws us off our course. And then
Mm-hmm.
basically we're following their path when what we
Yeah.
should be doing is following our path. And so don't compete with somebody else, even inadvertently. Make sure that your eyes stay on your own path.
So, how long did it take you to write the book?
I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months.
Okay. But what
I
was
mean, it took
your
me a lifetime to come up with 15 core beliefs, and then,
it does,
you know,
I know the actual
yeah,
amount of sitting down and writing it compared to the
yeah,
lifelong journey you have to have the experience to do. And I
yeah,
think that's why so many memoir writers do come out with their books kind of later in life.
yeah.
To share their experiences with other people, not so that they have to compare them to yours, but to, you do. I mean, for me, I want to look at people who are successful to say, how did they become successful? Does it resonate with me? I mean, just like having different writers on this show, because someone out there may be wanting to write their story. I mean, I have a woman I know had a heart transplant, and she'll say she had cancer. I mean, she did cancer 14 different times.
Yeah.
And I say, you got to write your story, and she's like, I don't want to write my story, kind of mimicking what you're saying. But maybe someone like her might listen to this and say, well, you know what? I do have these core beliefs, or this is, the diet that I stuck with, or whatever it is. And just sharing that part of the journey might be some sort of tool or light for someone who, is going through something similar.
Well,
Um,
and I will say that I think, and I've never spoken to this lady. I have no idea what's in her mind, but I know for me, writing about some of these things, is very resistant to do this because to write it, you have to relive it. And
yes.
I've been through a lot of EMDR to deal with things and confront things. And look, I didn't want to
Yeah.
relive these circumstances.
Yeah.
So what gave me a way to do this was writing about the tools that I had used to get through these things. So I didn't write about the things, I wrote about the tools that I used to get through them. And for me, the tools were the 15 core beliefs. Maybe for that lady, there are things that she's done
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
survive and overcome those challenges. And so I would suggest to someone that has had life experiences that maybe the reason they're holding back is they think that, their story isn't good enough, or or why would somebody listen to them? I wrote it to encourage people. So
Yeah.
I didn't write it to share a story about cancer or child abuse or suicide. Those things come up. I wrote it to encourage people that if no matter what your situation is, there are techniques that you can use that I've used, and maybe they'll help you not quit and continue to struggle.
I love that. Yeah, we had talked briefly before we started recording about, I'm working, well, I finished a book and it should hopefully be published this year, called Being in My Breast, which is about living, loving, and dying with breast cancer. And
Hmm.
as you're saying, like you're writing it, you wrote it to encourage people. It also in my head, like, why did I write that? And I mean, I really wrote it to try to understand why my girlfriend did not want to like fight her cancer anymore. Like I felt like she was just giving up. She was surrendering, saying, you know what, I have 9 months. That's all I'm going to do. But in writing it, it ended up becoming a guide for me, even how to live my life.
Yes.
Because like you said, the number one cause of death is birth.
Yeah.
So, the fact that we're all actively dying, I almost want to rename the book like, living, loving, and dying with life, in
Yeah.
life, because we all want to live it. We want to love our life, but eventually, we are going to pass on. And if we can live our life, just enjoying each day and not contemplating or not thinking about something bad, like changing that thought process and using the proper words. Like I loved when you said you pick words like, to retrain your thoughts to say, oh, this is, going to be such a battle today. Well, no, maybe it's just going to be a little struggle today. It might be a little bit of a difficulty day. And, just to stop and pause and say, what other word could I use that doesn't sound as, you know, hard?
Well, it's framing the struggle to ourselves. It's the reason why I did acupuncture and guided imagery and all these things.
Yeah.
And look, one of my core beliefs is never try, always work. And and
Hmm.
and what that's really focused on is the wording. So I catch myself and I work a lot to not allow myself to say try. And people will say, well, yeah, but it means, but to me, it's not for everybody else, right? You
Yeah.
can pick whatever words you want to. For me, the word try is not very committal, right? The
So you're going
word
to work at
work
it.
is a commitment. Like it's action oriented. Trying is like, I'm going to try to eat better. I'm going to try to be at your dinner on Thursday. Like if somebody
I'm going
says,
to work better at eating better.
right, but and if somebody said to you, you invite them to a dinner and they say, my calendar's a little booked, but I'm going to work to be there. Or they say, my calendar's a little booked, but I'm going to try. They're not coming. Nobody who's trying to
Yeah.
show up at your
Try,
dinner is going to
right.
be there.
Yeah.
But if they
No,
say
I
I'm going to
agree.
work to be there, I think it lends a little more commitment to the proposal. So I think that's important when we're going through difficulties. I don't want to
Yeah.
try to live. I want to work to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you also mentioned earlier about how, and it is very true. If you're going to write, if someone's writing a story about a trauma that they've had, when you're writing it, you do end up kind of reliving it, and it is very difficult. But you said something like you used all these techniques to help you not necessarily like relive it, but just to revisit it, to write.
Yeah, yeah. So it's much easier for me to talk about it um, when, I mean, and I've gotten to a point where I can talk about many of the subjects, but it was easier for me to write about the means by which I was able to get through or come back from these
Yeah.
setbacks or challenges or traumas than it was just to write a book that was solely focused on that. Now, if I write a
Yeah.
book solely focused on cancer, I'm immersing myself back in that journey. If I
Right.
focus on the things that have helped me survive, then I'm really focusing on the positives. I don't like to spend a lot of time thinking about how difficult it was. It was very difficult. And
You,
it was brutally difficult. And anyone going through it, I go back to I'm still in this trial. I go back to the UPenn every 4 months, and I walk into the Abramson Center for Advanced Medicine,
I can
and
imagine.
everybody there they look like I looked. And it
Mm,
just breaks my heart to walk in and see people that, I'm like,
yeah.
I don't know your struggle, but I got an idea. And it's hard.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go back and just like live that.
Well,
But I'm happy to talk about things that we can do to get us through it.
yeah, show your book again because I tell you, you really, I mean, Andy Campbell really is you have risen beyond and, turn the trauma into triumph. It really is. I mean, just the way you've written that book and how you've described how you revisited the trauma and really turned it into triumph. I mean, how can you share with us like how people can get in touch with you or how they can buy your book, how they can get this copy?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to go to my website. People used to ask me or they would ask other people,
Ask.
how was he still alive? And so people would say, well, just ask Andy. And so the website became askandycampbell.com.
Yeah, and
And so if you
I'm going
go,
to put the link on for askandycampbell.com because people really need to go there. I'm super impressed with your website and you share all the supplements that you're taking. And I mean, it's very impressive and it shows
yeah,
the work you have
yeah.
done.
Well, I appreciate
So
that. Yeah. So there's a page there about the 15 core beliefs. You can click a link there to take it Amazon, and that's where you can buy it. So the easiest way to get there is just go through the website, askandycampbell.com.
Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And we're going to put all the links and a link to your book and everything down here. And I wish you so much continued success on your journey of life and just, always being triumph in everything you do.
Thank you, Angela. Pleasure to be
Thank
here.
you. Thank you. And I want to thank the audience in Studio 954 for, the opportunity to have this show. I mean, Why Write is, a very popular show here locally on the television stations and streaming worldwide. If you're a writer and you're looking to write your story and you don't know how to do it, tune in. You're going to find a writer that you will resonate with. And most likely you can reach out to them and talk to them about it. And, for this episode, if you're struggling with something, I mean, you definitely want to go to ask Andy Campbell about it. And you know what? You just need to be resilient and have some core beliefs in you that keep things going. This is the time of the program where I give the writers who are listening a little writing prompt. So when the show ends, put your timer on for 10 minutes and you're going to start writing. And today, after talking to author Andy Campbell, we talked about, how you go through traumas in life and how these are just like journeys. These are, just little struggles that we have, and we want to look at them that way, even though they probably felt like a really big battle for you. So I want you to write yourself a letter. How's this? Today we're doing letter writing. Write yourself a letter. Pick an age that you were at that you might have been, pick a trauma that you've been through, but pick an age that you're at that you can write yourself, your younger self, a letter to say, you know what? You're going to go through this, but you're going to endure because this is how you're going to handle it. And you know what? That letter right there is going to help you on your way to start writing your story and to do a little self-discovery too. So happy writing. Thank you again for tuning into yWrite, and I will see you next episode. Have a great day. See ya.